taking the easy way has propelled me into the hard way several different times.
This is Kimball DeLaMare. Welcome to the Grandpa Channel. I'm Steve Harris, but my grandkids call me Rivers. Here we ask a simple question. What did life teach you the hard way? Because a lifetime reveals things you can't learn any other way. On this show, we sit down with people who lived a little, stumbled a little, and learned a few things along the way. So pull up a chair, because what a lifetime reveals can steady another. Welcome to the Grandpa Channel. I'm really looking forward to talking with my guest, Kimball DeLaMare. I have known Kimball for like a bajillion years, or maybe 52 years to be exact. Our friendship started in the land north called Finland. We were missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Kimball single-handedly helped me stay on my mission. So we won't go into the reasons for that, but he was a lifeline for me, and we just had so much fun. So welcome, Kimball, to the Grandpa Channel.
Rivers, I guess, huh?
Rivers, Steve, whatever you want to call me. Give us a little bit of the arc of your life. Give us an idea of who you are, and people would love to kind of figure out a little bit about you.
Third kid out of one girl, the oldest, and 7 brothers, on a elementary school principal's salary with a indefatigable mom who took in sewing from people, eventually ended up at the legislative council, the managing things there, and at Ellis and Ivory Company. So we had lots of hand-me-downs. My mom would make 21 loaves of homemade bread a week. We'd help stir the dough for that. We mixed our regular milk with powdered milk to make it go longer, and had a great childhood. Very close to my brothers. My sister thoughtfully exited the house right after her senior year of high school and entered summer school, just to get away from the chaos. Heavy sports in the family. I'm about 6'2", and I'm the shortest out of the 7 brothers. And we made up our own fun and created our own conflicts and had fabulous neighbors all around us. It was a village that raised us. And that was the beginnings of things. Put myself through college, had some pretty rough patches as a teenager. Well, I basically was kicked off both the varsity teams of basketball and football because I couldn't maintain training. Some real struggles to get away from some addiction that then propelled me into thinking about that as a possible career. Served for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Finland with Steve and some many other friends that I'm still close to. Upon returning, I walked on the team down in southern Utah to see if I could play basketball there, and they said, "We want you." And within a few months of some heavy training, got undercut in some intramural basketball and herniated a couple of discs. And that was the end of that career. But I did find out that I could have played at that level. That was important for me. Was fascinated with working in this career, and a neighbor gave me a job working with farmers, an agricultural distributor, ranchers, farmers, going through graduate school. Social workers with a master's in 1982 were getting the grand salary of about $14,000 a year. I was driving forklift and truck on the weekends to get through school and pay my bills. And the owner of the company said, "So what are you going to make once you're done, Kimball?" And I told him, and he said, "I'll give you $21K to be on the sales desk." So I stayed with them for 4 years, but just missed doing the work in clinical social work. And I'd had a small private practice and then eventually came back into that career. But in the meantime, had some of the most wonderful life lessons working with the ranchers and farmers who respect Mother Nature and just never get full of themselves. They're the most humble, well-grounded people that I know. Ended up with a brand new psychiatric hospital, was just installed in the Salt Lake area. There were some competitors with that, and became their clinical director after a couple of years. With insurance changes and managed care, I was approached to go with about 3 others to put our houses on the line and start a long-term residential treatment center for adolescents that are really struggling. And we developed that and a therapeutic college prep boarding school And since that time, I've been involved with about 15 other startups, and was with a company for a good while where I traveled the country looking at the quality and effectiveness of different treatment centers and training clinicians and others. And so I've been in the doors of about 400 treatment centers, and I've been in every state but 3 in this kind of work. And who would have thought a kid on the lower part of Michigan Avenue in Salt Lake would end up with just about 1 million frequent flyer miles off of this, and being able to associate with so many great people around the country. So at the same time, met my first wife, went through some good years with her, and then as we were trying to have kids, had a stillborn a couple of months prior, about 3 months prior to her being due. We mourned differently, made different decisions about things that propelled a difficult divorce, and then met Lisa. We would have been lined up by several different people, had us in mind, and it's been 36 years. It'll be 36 years this coming July that we've been together. She had a beautiful little daughter who became my stepdaughter and was finally my answer to getting to have some kids. And then through another round of fertility testing and stuff, which I'd gone through in my first marriage, we got to do that again. And then it was apparent that Lisa was unable to have some kids. And so we went through the expensive and sometimes humiliating process of wanting to be considered as adopted parents. And we were able to adopt 2 others, John and Whitney. And there have been fabulous answers to prayer in our lives. So filled up our family. So all along, I've been serving in volunteer roles and for my church, and been a scoutmaster with 22 scouts that about put me under. I always have served with the youth. My wife believes that's because I'm fixated at that stage of development. So there's your overview.
That's a great overview. Well, one of the questions that I wanted to explore with you, because you've had all these varied, both wonderful and not so wonderful experiences, is what has life taught you the hard way? What are a couple of things that kind of come to your mind, and maybe give us a little bit of background?
Well, I talked about a couple of those things as we're going along, but you'd prepped me saying that might be one of the questions. And I think the first piece about this is that taking the easy way has propelled me into the hard way several different times. Why I can pass on going to class this day. East High had flexible scheduling. They couldn't keep track of whether you were truant or not. So I took the easy way on it. I took the easy way on, not with my work. I have always had a pride in some good, strong work that was instilled in me by my father, my mother. But other ways, boy, if I could slide, I was going to slide, which resulted in lots of self-inflicted hard ways. That point I thought is important to make first, that I've been victimized by those that have propelled me into other things. So when I look at the other hard way kinds of things, those were more life circumstances that weren't necessarily within my control. And so perhaps those are the ones to focus on. But I did want to make that point that I've just planned myself by not planning and by not working and not being too diligent, all sorts of hard ways of different diversions off the path. Growing up, I think there were sometimes some challenges with hand-me-downs and having the Bob Wolf sneakers instead of the Converse Star sneakers, and the Sears or JCPenney Levi's as opposed to the Levi Strauss. And I think that's been a tremendous benefit. It wasn't that hard at the time. We were fed. We had a good life. We had parents that cared about us. And some of the inadequacies and worries about that, I think that taught me to look past those and not be as preoccupied about how I'm coming across or how somebody else is. And there's times when I might see a kid going along, or a mom or a dad, where they're not wearing the most modern fashions, and it's like perhaps that's given me some empathy and some understanding and some curiosity about what lies beneath that. Where's their resilience coming, that they're still at it and not discouraged by it? Obviously, losing out on being on some teams that were very competitive by my mistakes. So those were the easy way that ended up with hard ways. I had a teammate at one time that was so angry with me when we were seniors after I'd left the team. in football that we were scrubbing floors at a medical center. So our job at night was to go in and scrub and brush off the floors and then put a new sheen of wax on it and buff them. And that was our job for a few hours a night. As we're going along, he said, "I am so pissed at you," and punched me in the face. And I'm like, "What is going on?" And he said, "You let our whole team down. We've been playing since we were 10 and 11, and you weren't there for us." That one hit me hard. I've learned to be there more for people because I look back and think about what he said to me at that time. A few minutes after he hit me, I wanted to throw at him too, but thought better of it. And he's continued to be a strong and loyal friend to me all these years. And I appreciated learning that you can be blunt about stuff, maybe not always with some fisticuffs. Mm-hmm. Herniated some discs when I finally was going to fulfill my life dream, getting undercut and then having to lie down on the back of classes and wear a little girdle thing and have physical therapy and crawl off golf courses and having to give up some golf was a really difficult thing. But as I have now looked at other people with severe injuries or perpetual back pain, mine lasted for a few years, and I'm now quite free of that pain and didn't ever have to go through surgery. But thinking about that person that's thrown their back out and can't get to work, who has to plan whether they are going to move their right leg first or their left leg to try and avoid the heavy cramping, and then sliding down onto their knees and crawling to the bathroom. Mine wasn't a very long time, but that hard time really taught me a lot about people that show and being able to respect them and see the resilience in those people. I thought that was a really important teaching moment for me. Losing a little one in that first marriage, we'd tried for 4 years, and finally we're expecting this little one. And with 6 brothers and a sister, all married to fertile myrtles, and my oldest sister with her 7 kids and having first four boys, which just devastated her. She called my mom like, "Am I ever going to be blessed with a girl in my life? Is testosterone and stink going to be my life?" Yeah. But so finally we're in the family way, and then to go through that loss was just devastating. And I'd never really understood how deeply that pain can hit. As we held that little girl, I was flooded with an insight as to how precious she was and what kind of a person she was as a spirit, and how she would be as a woman. And she actually resembled one of my great young woman examples, who's now our age, but was one of those stout leaders with ethics and love and all that capacity. And so the mourning of what we could have had really hit. And I learned some things from my grandfather about that, and from other family members and others that had suffered privately with that. I think that was really important for me to understand sadness at a deeper level. Who am I to be in this business of trying to do counseling with people with emotional difficulties and trauma and loss, and not have some of those lessons to be able to be experienced by myself? So I think that was really formative. The divorce was. And my first wife was such a stand-up person about things, actually pulled my family together. One of the only people I've ever seen ever do this, and looked them all in the face and asked for their forgiveness about some things that she had chosen to do. What courage. So that lesson was, okay, I'm going through some things, but I don't know that I'm as evolved as she is. And where does she get this? And how is she being able to move on with this? And it allowed me to more critically look at how I was and what I contributed in that. That's been crucial for me in looking at marriages. And in this society of such polarization, there's this tendency, and you're an attorney, this adversarial stuff is literally assigned to you. But do I buy into that myself? So that's another lesson that's been taught, is her grace and integrity and capacity was stunning, and it allowed me to be able to move on in some other ways. Fertility issues, going some more and some more. I've got 39 nieces and nephews on the DeLaMare side of the family, and we've got our 3. Hard lessons with business startups was a pretty interesting area. So we put our houses on the line, and I had far less equity to do anything with, but as we opened a treatment center, I remember going to my mom's house and looking at the basement and saying, could we fit in here? Lisa and Lindsay and myself, the kids, the other 2 hadn't come along as adopted. Will this work? And that was a challenge, just to go through the many hours of that. and try and keep sane. So I've had my share of some hard lessons. One of our kids has struggled with addiction for over 13 years. And there's probably some things from circumstances in the pregnancy and stuff that may have affected that, and friends and some other pieces. But that can just take it completely out of a family and destroy a marriage and destroy the connection with a kid as you're going through that. The lesson I've learned with that is there's a divine hand in these processes. I think that we're given specific, customized challenges from which to learn and become refined. It's like, did I sign up for this one? Did Lisa sign up for this one? But yeah, we did. And in our existence, Russell M. Nelson says that this life is literally kind of a nanosecond when you contemplate the eternities. And if I had to go through the path I have to be able to now have a relationship with that loved one that is growing and that we didn't lose despite all of the confusion and conflict and worry and challenge, I think it becomes worth it. I think that when you talk about learning the hard way, perhaps in the eternities, this is the most efficient way to learn. Maybe this is the easiest way.
Maybe, yeah.
How else am I going to learn some of that empathy that I might have for some others, or to stay with a task, or to apologize? That's really, it's just, let's give you boot camp, and let's really throw in a whole bunch of these things at you right away. And that'll refine you far more quickly than having kind of a lighter path with the Disney birds on your shoulder chirping a happy tune.
So I've got a question for you. In your life that has had plenty of ups and downs, Kimball, when do you feel most fully alive in your life? What are you doing when you just go, this is, I could stay here forever? Do you have some things that really bring you joy?
Well, there's a load of them. A quiver full, but if it comes to kids and grandkids and nieces and nephews and brothers and people. I think my quiver has different arrows in it than some other people's family quivers. Yesterday, it was Mother's Day, and they celebrated my birthday the same day. And grandkids said nice things about me and told me they loved me. I'm Pop Pop. You're Rivers, but I'm Pop Pop. Just to have them say, when you helped me with that, I remember from when you were doing that. Grandson Will said, when we have some of our conversations, I'm learning more from you than I do at Farmington High. It's like, wow, I'll take that kind of a thing. I'll be up on the trails this afternoon behind our house up by Miller Park in North Canyon. The Seagull lilies just bloomed. The crocus will be coming, and it's a stunning part of the world we live in. A wife that has my back and sees only the best in me. But those things, a belief in divinity and having a relationship with God, knowing that he has carried my grief, that he is willing to carry my sorrow, that he can help me correct my mistakes, gives an ease of things, a strong belief in a hereafter, and the feelings that come of connection to my parents and my grandparents that have really been powerful for me.
Let me ask you this question. One of your grandkids or one of your nieces and nephews comes to you and says, Dad / Pop / Kimball, he or she says, I'm really worried what's going on in the world right now. I hear all these awful things that people are saying about each other here in our country. And then there's crazy stuff going on in the Middle East, in Venezuela, in virtually every part of the world. And then they pose the question to you, how do I deal with this? Can you help me deal with this? How would you respond to that in a grandfatherly, unclely sort of way?
With a couple of them, I've actually drawn a little picture. So if I ask you what you see on that, people will usually say, well, I see this little black dot. Well, describe what you see there. Well, it's about 1/4 of an inch. It's like it's driven with a pen. It's not all the way concentric. Maybe it was a big pen. It's not all the way filled in. Da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'll say, well, what else do you see? And they say, well, that's kind of it. And I think that there's a light and whiteness and goodness surrounding these pockets of conflict and gas prices and politicians calling each other names, you can spend most of your day focused on those pieces of it. And I'm not going to be able to help you too much with that. And if that's where your focus is, life is probably going to suck for you. If you're in political science or you're a politician, you're going to have to find some light with your family or some other people. Other than that, I would probably go that way of saying, yeah, that stuff's all there. Let's talk about the other stuff that's there.
I have found that some of my kids at certain times have become discouraged. It's hard not to. Either there's social issues going on, personal social issues, or all of the bad events. And when they think about, I think it's very easy to lapse into pessimism and lack of gratitude. I think that we old people, speaking as a 70-year-old, and that we need to have a ready answer for our kids and our grandkids of why they shouldn't just throw their hands up in the air and say, it just sucks. How would you describe what is your source of peace in your life and in your world?
Well, I alluded to that. I'm the arms of my wife. There's just this warm, low voice in the morning. It's like, all right, she's still here. And she looks at me with those blue eyes. That ends up being a source of peace. What I was talking about before about what gives me joy, but in my moments of greatest grief and sorrow and anger and those things, there's a hymn that says, where can I turn for peace? And prayer ends up being extremely powerful for me. And the Word of God, as I search through that, sometimes a verse will jump up that's like, okay, slow down, Kimball, or I forgot about that part of things. And the camaraderie of the many friends and family members that I have, those all are there. And I think just curiosity. There's so many cool things that are happening at the same time as we're going through all this other stuff.
I want to kind of have you think about what I perceive to be incredible areas of expertise. Let's say that you have a husband and wife who have a child who has been gone off into some bad paths with drugs and or alcohol. Based on your experience, your decades of experience, both counseling and trying to get out of that sort of, a lifestyle, what are a couple of things that you would want to tell them that they need to remember?
Yeah. Do you know what my fees are? No. And are you on Cigna or Aetna or what? No. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people where that is the first question that they ask.
Yeah.
Before I do anything with that kid, how is your marriage?
Really?
And if they're not married, what is your partnership like?
Yeah.
Or you're a divorced couple, how unified are you? And how many shared values do you have? I'm not going to touch anything with that kid until I get a sense of what's going on between them.
Yeah.
If it's an adult that's going through those things and they're older parents, I'm still going to ask some of that question, but I'm also going to ask about the companionship and the relationships that person that's struggling with addiction has. But I just believe you have to start with the parents. The more solid they are, that's a bedrock that kid can then place his feet on or her feet on to start to make some change. But if that foundation is shaky, I can then rely on some really dynamic counselors and some friends and some people in fellowship groups like AA or NA or something. They can take the place lots of times of that. But if there's parents involved, how strong and unified and healthy are they?
That's very interesting. What's a tidbit, a powerful tidbit of hope and optimism? Say that you have a husband and wife they're pretty solid, that they're trying to be on the same page. What kind of hope can you give them, Kimball?
If it's mental illness, if it's addiction, those are diseases. Some ways I'm giving the same kind of hope as you're giving to somebody that has leukemia or has some other congenital heart disease or something of that sort. We can help to manage some symptoms for some people, and your hope, I want to be realistic with them. For some people, there's going to be some disposition and some circumstances that are going to be very difficult for them to manage and to support their child as they're going along. But the great hope out of this, I believe, is connection.
Mm-hmm.
Keep that connection with that person, no matter what. You can have healthy boundaries with it to where it's a letter or a note that's dropped off because they might be inundating you with guilt trips off of texts and other things. But there's always ways to have something happen. It could be that somebody is an emissary that's passing on to them that they need you to know you're still thinking about them when it's a really toxic kind of a relationship. And then there's so many other steps to move towards that person knowing that they're valued, that they're important, that they're worth it. So those are some ways to start with that. I think the person themselves has to be able to start to give themselves grace and start to see some change. Social media has really hit us hard in terms of the comparative pieces that kids are doing. Since 2008, smartphone and social media each year, anxiety and depression have increased by 2 to 3%.
Wow.
So sometimes the advice is if you're going to be on there, let's find something that's a little more positive and fight the algorithmic contamination that's going to come otherwise. But this kind of persistent love, I think, is really important. And for a couple that's going through this, when I'm talking about unified, I am not talking about a couple who are in some kind of lockstep robotic agreement and following some manual. Each spouse needs to accord the other the flexibility and space to be really angry and despondent and I'm out of this for a while. That's it for me. And just wants to disconnect from all of it, while the other one might be hanging in by a thread for a while, and know that either can change position. Lisa and I joke about that 1 week I'm mercy and she's justice. And the next week she's justice and I'm mercy.
Yeah.
And that in raising kids, if we were both justice in the same week, watch out, kid. And I actually think I think that's the beauty of a good marriage is the balancing that has to happen and the interposition of the different skill sets that both parents bring to the table.
It's kind of a good cop, bad cop in some ways.
Really is.
Reversal. I love the reversal, because there are times when I want to lower the boom and Jane says, no, and I listen. And then she listens to me when I just say, no, you gotta calm down here a little bit.
Yeah. I've associated with 3 women that I was assigned by my church to visit on a monthly basis who were all raising teenage boys 35 years ago. And I just visited all 3 of them on Friday. I take them a little Mother's Day thing every Mother's Day for this last 35 years. All 3 were school teachers with teenagers. All 3 of them had 1 to 2 of their kids that needed to be in some pretty intense treatment, and they were single.
Oh, boy.
When you talk about people that are the most heroic on this planet, I'll put up a single parent with a contrary adolescent with not too many resources in play against the greatest NBA star, ultramarathoner, or the guy that just broke 2 hours. Those guys are wimps compared to what these people do. And people don't accord them. They should have the Nobel Peace Prizes.
As you look back on your life, Kimball, do you sense guidance, providence, faith, luck, whatever you want to call it, as you've looked back on your over 7 decades? How would you answer that question?
Absolutely. Early on, I was lost, probably only 100 feet from the Walker Bank cabin up by Silver Lake, and was scared to death. I think I was maybe 6 and couldn't find my way to my older brother and sister just on a path. Panicked, thought there were bears around and everything. Short little prayer, and all of a sudden these people came through kind of the bushes right to me, walked me right there. They weren't on a path. They kind of bushwhacked right to me. I felt impressed after I ripped up my back, it was like, why stay down here in Cedar City? And my roommate had stiffed me on the rent, and my back hurt, and I wasn't going to be able to be on the basketball team. Why not go home to mom's homemade bread, even if it's going to be a room in the basement in a crowded house? And just didn't get any kind of peace about that and was puzzled about it. Why would I stay here? And then when I thought, maybe God wants me to stay here, had these strong feelings like, you need to stay here. And it's like, well, what am I going to do? 2 days earlier, my father had put in the mail a check for about $500 of money that I had saved for my mission that they had dipped into and used on the mission, but I was going to pay for my mission anyway. But he said, "We want you to have this." He had no idea that I was in this circumstance. Ended up with a professor that was taking care of me. Impressions about Lisa and what to do to get her to say yes. Stuff with my employment, impressions with clients that I worked with. That's probably been one of the most important places. There's a guy that had a life after death experience that's really beautiful. And in it, he realized how precious people were and what agony they were in after they left this world and while they were in this world. And it was transformative to him. And so he would pray for guidance before his sessions, this psychiatrist. And there'll be times where I'm going along the classic cognitive behavioral therapy stuff or dialectical behavior therapy. And it's like, shut your mouth, Kimball. You just need to be quiet and let her talk for a few minutes. Or ask some question about her grandpa that's not in the social history anywhere else. So I see these little mini cues. What I worry about is if we hear that we get to have a full review of our life when we get there. I think that they're going to show me walking with giant neon signs blinking saying, "Go this way, Kimball," and I'll have just walked right past billboard after billboard.
Yeah.
I think God has had to have a sense of humor about it.
I hope he does. I hope that I provided a few good laughs for him over the years. What are your superpowers?
You warned me a bit about this, and one of the things that my classic one is my wife and my relationship with God. Those are that I have a relationship and know how to sustain it.
Right.
But a personal superpower, the yin and the yang. There's a term in dialectical therapy when it says it's a dialectical experience. It's the ability to be able to see the negative and the positive, to see this and to see this. And I think I've always had the ability to say, on the other hand, or if we look at it this way, or if I look at it this way, or wait a minute, so they're that agitated about this, that means that you matter to them. Instead of it being, they're so mad at you. Like, to get somebody that worked up, think about the energy and the focus on you.
Yeah.
So I think one of my superpowers is being able to recognize the half full, half empty, and propel and be a proponent for that glass obviously going to be getting full with all of your capacity. And despite these things, you mean you're in my office today doing this? Or yeah, you work through those things and now you're running this business. I think that's one of my abilities is to see these hidden gifts of people and challenge the negative part.
If this stayed with you, there's probably a reason. Sometimes the easy way quietly leads us somewhere harder. And sometimes the hard way is the only thing that teaches us what actually matters. If this conversation stayed with you, there's another one that sits in a similar place about how the things we think we understand sometimes change over time. And if you don't want this to move on too quickly, we got a place for that too. How's that?